We are recording. Cal, welcome to the World Class Dads podcast. Happy to have you here, brother.
Dude, thanks for having me on, Brad. This is great. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was just sharing with you that this is I've been a dad for 18 years, but in this particular season, it's become such a big part of how I want to go forward. So I love that we're having this conversation today.
awesome. Well, let's take it back a little bit then. Let's start there at the beginning. Can you just share for folks who haven't listened to your show, don't know too much about you, just fill in a little bit of your background, both professionally and on the personal side of kind of what you've done to, obviously it's a big question, but what's brought you here today? We can start on the professional side and then we'll dig into some of the
Yeah,
kid stuff.
for sure. So I was a trader in Chicago for about 18 years. So from 95 to 2013, I got out of the business. And my wife and I and our kids moved down to Austin, Texas. So we've been in Austin for the last 8 years. Absolutely love it. Uh, in the period of when I left trading, I got into fitness coaching a little bit. I got involved with a pro fitness league called the National Pro Grid League. I was an owner of one of the teams based out of Phoenix. So that was a really kind of fun experience. It was something that I was coming into personally through physical fitness, lifestyle changes, nutrition, and that opportunity seemed to really engender everything that was calling to me after trading. Unfortunately, it only lasted for a couple of years. The league didn't, succeed financially, and since then, I've been kind of in the process of discovering who I am. And so, for context, I'm 49 years old right now and have 3 kids. My oldest is 18, graduating from high school this year. And then I have another son who's 15 and my daughter's 13. And so it's been quite a journey, as you know. At each stage, these kids are throwing curveballs, and I always thought it was kind of a bullshit, like the kids are your greatest teachers. I never understood it until they really started to teach me. And it's not so much like these grand lessons. It's, for me, they teach me where I have resistance, where I'm not okay with either how they're going through life or how it reflects upon me, or maybe it doesn't reflect upon me. So I've really tried to be attuned to what those teachings are.
Interesting. I definitely want to dive into that a little bit, but before we do, so you mentioned how before you went into kind of the coaching and the sports team ownership, you were a trader in Chicago. What instigated that career transition out of that role that you were in for 20 plus years?
It was really it was a book I was reading called The Way of the Superior Man by David Data. And there's one chapter in particular. I highly recommend it to men and women, but really for men, read. I apologize for my dog Mona sees another dog outside right now. Anyway,
no worries.
Chapter 12 was the one that did it for me. I probably spent the last year and a half at that point in trading. I was a partner at the firm, and just feeling like I was faking it, and it just, something didn't feel right. And I had a lot of self-judgment around that. Like, here I am, I'm a partner, I'm not really showing up, I don't like being here. I'm spending my time on all these other things, physical training, learning about it, and such, that when I read that chapter in the book, it basically released me of all that judgment. I said, dude, you're working on a project, and for me it was my job. You're working on a project that you just don't care about anymore. And it's okay. There's a greater purpose for you underneath that. So just feel into that. And dude, it was like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. I went home. I was in a coffee shop reading it. And meanwhile, I was crying reading this in the middle of a coffee shop. I go home to my wife and I say, babe, we got to talk. I think I have to leave trading. Whew. And just the way she kind of showed me grace in that moment. It was like, whatever you need, I support you. And so that was the that was really kind of all I needed. And from there on, I let go of that part of me. And now I'm in the process, as it turns out, of going back and loving that version of me. Because as it turns out, as you go on a more kind of awakened spiritual path, some of your past comes back to you, and you don't always look at it in the most favorable light. And so I'm in the
Mm.
process of kind of healing that, which has been amazing. But that's for a whole nother podcast.
Well, that's awesome. And so that's a huge transition then. And it's amazing that your wife was so supportive of that. And then your kids were a bit younger then too. So they would have been, what would the age ranges have
Yeah.
been
So
at that time frame?
my oldest was going into fifth grade.
Okay.
So fifth grade, second grade, first grade.
Yeah. So did that play a role into it too? You've got this great job, you're crushing it, you're doing well, and you look at your family. Obviously, your wife was super supportive right off the bat, which is amazing. But was that going through your mind at all too, like the kids or the
You
family?
know,
Or
to be frank, no. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people, that's a concern, and I think it's a
Mhm.
valid concern. But kids, especially in fifth grade, second grade, first grade, don't maybe really know what's out there. I don't even know what's out there for us when we're going to move, but I know that it's going to create new opportunities. I do know that kids are resilient. In whatever we decide to do, they will have their own lessons and their learning around where we go.
Mhm.
And I get a little saddened when people are so concerned about what their kids may think or what their kids are expressing, when it's hampering mom and dad from making those lifestyle changes when they need to shed their skin. They need to go someplace new. They want to go to better weather, whatever it is, and they stay because of the kids. Well, the kids don't really know, I don't think. There's
Right.
some things that kids intuitively know. Those types of life decisions, I'm not going to leave it to my kids. I'm just not. And
Yeah.
I've also had that orientation in life where when I feel something, I just know it to be true for me, and I'll go for it.
I love that. I had a guest on a couple weeks ago, Travis Chappell, and he said something similar. And he said, I don't want to just tell my kids that they can be anything. I want to show them that they can be anything through my own journey and path and successes. And it reminds me of that because he's a similar fearless guy, will do what it takes. Obviously has high priority on his family, but wants to live that truth so that they can learn by watching him do it. So,
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that's how I've tried to live my life. Certainly more in the last handful of years as I've really keyed into, they see everything.
mm,
It doesn't matter what comes out of my mouth. What matters is the energy that I share with them, and then how I'm living my life.
yeah.
And yeah, it's really helped. Again, when you start to live from that way as a parent, it just becomes way easier because you're living in integrity, and they're seeing it and they're feeling it, and there's a trust that's built.
Yeah, I have started to see that. So just for my own backgrounds, I only have one kiddo right now, and she's 14 or 16 months. So we're still early on, and that's why I started the
Sure.
podcast, was to learn. But I'm already seeing that, like, just how we act and the energy in the household, she mirrors that. And you can tell on a good day and a bad day, oftentimes it starts with, how we're feeling and acting and behaving and the energy we're putting out, that she's mirroring that back to us. She's not even talking that much yet. So I can only imagine how that evolves.
Yeah, and they totally pick up on it. And I don't know about you, but I grew up in a home that there was not loving. My mom and dad, there was no chemistry there.
Mm,
I wouldn't say they didn't fight. They did at times. My dad was kind of a jackass at times, but you could just feel that was not love. And so a
mm,
lot of people were like, well, we don't fight, and your kids see the connection, whether it's there or not, they will pick up on it. And I know that when my wife and I would say when my son was a freshman, so this would have been three plus years ago, we were in a bit of a transition and not sure where we were in our life together. And we weren't fighting. but we weren't connected at all. And our
Mm.
son had a really, really hard time. Yeah, he had a really hard time his freshman year. And I know there's transitions that happen anyway, but in reflecting upon it, I could just see the impact that we were having because we weren't safe for him. He
Mm.
didn't feel safe. So that's twice now. You got me choked up.
Well,
uh,
in a conversation on family, to be expected.
yeah. So, but anyway, just to speak to that, yeah, energetically, it's like what we're putting out, and so it's really important that Peyton, my wife, and I resolve whatever needs to get resolved. Um, and we can do that in front of the kids too.
Mm.
Like it's not like everything has to happen behind closed doors. I think them seeing us work through resolution. And sometimes we get a little bit triggered, but there's no shame in any of it, and it's just it's open conversation.
That's
Can all be a
amazing.
learning. Yeah.
I mean, just the lessons that on relationship that they can take from that then and apply, in their future relationships is invaluable to see that, to see, oh, there are hard times and here mom and dad work through it and those lessons. So kudos to you guys. Is there anything specific that as you and your wife, he went through your healing journey and connected on a deeper level, that kind of key takeaways or something that like you would pass along to a younger family who will inevitably go through trials and tribulations in their relationship with their spouse?
Yeah. That's a great question. And it's funny. I just had a conversation with a close friend of mine yesterday who painted a kind of a different picture for me about something that I know very well, but hadn't looked at it through this orientation. And it's like, just to be curious about your partner.
Mm.
Um, I've been with my wife for 21 years now, so I think I know her, but I know an older version of her. I don't really know her today. She doesn't really know me today in a way. And so can I just be curious about who this person is? Who is this person? What makes them feel alive versus all the story that I put on her from the 21 years of beef we have, right?
Sure.
Because on some level there's that. And that just puts us into these stories where we each trigger each other versus, this is my partner. Like I want her to have an incredible life. I want, like, if something's not right with her and it's because of me,
Right.
I'd like to know that actually, rather than the little boy in me feeling like I'm in trouble and I don't want to face it. And
Mm.
so it's like just being open to, I guess it's the curiosity, like who is this person? What's going on with them? And, how would I treat them if this were a child? Because when we get triggered, it's that kind of wounded inner child that's coming out. And so who can I love that wounded child and make them feel safe?
I love that. I love that. And one other thing you said earlier that I just wanted to circle back on because it hit home for me was the fact that, when you have that energy that you're with your spouse or within the household, and that love, the family feels it, everybody feels it. And it's interesting because you see that even with a 1 year old. When me and my wife kiss, she lights, our baby lights up and smiles, and she thinks it's the coolest thing in the world when she sees us showing affection towards each other. And of course she loves it when affection is showed to her, but it's just such a human thing that you see right off the bat that they feel that and love that. And she gets all giddy when mom and dad are showing affection to each other. So anything you can do to improve that relationship with your spouse, I think has ripple effects and waves throughout the whole household and beyond. But it's cool
Totally.
that
And
we've identified that 10 minutes into
what
the
you
chat.
yeah, and well, what you're speaking to, and I think is it's pretty foreign to most people. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, just kind of in passing, but it's energetically what's happening. And the example you just gave is the ultimate example. They don't have language, they don't really understand, but they feel what is happening when those two hearts are connecting. And I invite people to to explore that, to get
Mm-hmm.
out of what maybe science has taught you, because science is actually proving this out. But just open yourself up, be curious about that. Like, what is real love feel like? What happens to the energetic of a room when people are there and they're in love together? Everything just lights up. And conversely, when there's tension, when there's friction, what happens? Everybody feels that too. So pay
Yeah.
attention to that stuff. Yeah.
So you just mentioned something, forget about what science teaches you. And it is, I think, a good transition to your t-shirt of Unlearn. So can you
Mm,
tell us a little bit about the Great Unlearn, what that is, how that came about?
yeah. So the Great Unlearn is my podcast. I started at the beginning of 2020. It really became my platform, my offering for others that were feeling the same things that I was feeling, that I'd been holding very tight to a belief system that wasn't even mine, that was given to me by my parents, my teachers, my coaches, society, fill in the blanks. Everyone had their hand in it, and I was making these agreements without really knowing it. And so one day you wake up and you're like, am I even any of these things? Do I believe any of these things? Um, and so for me, that moment happened, the kind of cracking of the egg happened in October of 2017. I was in Las Vegas at the Route 91 mass shooting. So I'm there with a friend, and you know, the bullets are raining down on the crowd, and we're hiding behind this tour bus with a bunch of other people. And I just had this notion, like,
Wow.
I did everything I was supposed to do, right? I retired at 41. I've got everything I've ever wanted. I've got a great wife, kids, great friends, and I'm completely unfulfilled. Like, what is this? Like, this doesn't make sense to me. And so when obviously I made it out of there, I went on this kind of journey without knowing. I was like, why am I here? This kind of existential inquiry of really trying to figure out what my purpose, what my role, why do we even exist?
Hmm.
And through the course of that learning, I was meeting a lot of amazing people that are having a huge impact on me. And I knew that they were going to have an impact on other people. And rather than me tell my friends about these people I was meeting, I wanted to bring it to a larger audience. And so I started the podcast as a way to say, hey, look, we all have these stories, we all have these beliefs. What if we were, what if we question it at all? Can we be curious enough to let go of these beliefs? And for me, my belief system kind of got um, crumbled before my eyes, because nothing that I thought could save me was going to save me at that moment.
Hmm.
And so it kind of called everything into question. And fortunately, I had enough people around me that were supportive of that journey and didn't need me to have answers. They just wanted me to be in the curiosity and the questioning of it. And as I felt that support, I knew that people around me needed that same support. I knew that others, men in particular, don't have that. And I was feeling a new version of me emerging, because I was in this safe container to be able to explore all these ideas. And so I really wanted to share what I was learning, and really, like a unlearning with everybody, and say, look, just, and I'm a pretty normal guy. I have this, this kind of normal path. I'm not someone who's been in an ashram in India, or been meditating for 3 months, on a mountaintop. I'm a normal guy who's got a family, and I had a job that was, traditional, and so I feel like I had a certain uh, credibility with the audience. Like, look, this
Hmm.
is my path. This is what I thought was successful. I did all that, to the nth degree, and it wasn't it. I'm not saying
Hmm.
don't try that, but for me, it wasn't it. And this is what's emerging as important to me. For me as a dad back then, I was showing up, I was there physically, but I was more of the provider, like providing experiences and making sure everything was taken care of, and was showing my love that way, which was
Hmm.
super disconnected to my heart. It's not like, I just wanted to be physically and emotionally and spiritually tied to these kids, but I didn't know how to. And so this journey allowed me to open up to that part of myself and be there in a way that, I couldn't have been a few years ago.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's part of the reason I started this podcast was, I'm a professionally ambitious person, I would say. I want to achieve things and have an impact and all of that. But it's a big part of, my heart and my mission to be there and connect deeply with my family and my kids. And so there's almost this I don't even know if it's a dichotomy, but I think that it's oftentimes presented as a dichotomy of your provider and dad. And there's these two sides, and sometimes you're one, sometimes you're other, and you have to figure out how to make it work. And this myth of work-life balance comes out of that. So have you seen, I guess from your time when you were still doing the trading job and you were in that phase of your life where there was that disconnect in your heart where you didn't know how to be there for your kids, how has your I guess how has your opinion or your perspective on providing and at the same time being dad changed or shifted, or is there anything specific to that realm that you really evolved within?
Yeah, I'd say it's a great point too, because there's all these different ways that we show up as dads, and not having it be the only way I show up. It's like just a part of how I show up. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
things are taken care of. Doesn't mean I'm gonna take care of everything. Like, you're gonna learn your own lessons as well. But uh, I do enjoy providing that. But it's really, for me, probably the biggest lesson I've learned is they're their own souls. Yes, they're here with me and Peyton, and they're in our home, but we don't own them. They're
Mm,
not little versions of us. They're here for their own journey. And if the best thing I can do is to make them feel comfortable in that, in who they are. And so I'm not trying to make my kid grow up and be a hockey player like I was, or be a trader, or do any of the things that I did. I may offer it to them as a way, like, this was cool for me, but I'm not, it's just a sampling, right? Is this interesting to you? Is it not?
mm,
Okay, let's move on. And really trying to pay attention to who they are, and specifically how they want to be seen. I don't want to be the out of touch dad. I'm not trying to be their best friend, but when they're saying something that I don't quite understand because of like Snapchat or whatever else they're on TikTok, like, I'll try to understand it, but I don't need to understand it. Um, I think a lot of times when we don't understand it, there becomes a judgment piece
mm.
to them. And I try to be very clear, like, I don't know why you posted that. It seems super messed up, but so try to explain it to me. And they're like, oh, I just thought it was a joke and it was funny. And it's like, okay, like, cool. Like, move on. I'm not disappointed. Like, your peers will let you know if that was funny or not. Dad's not gonna be the kind of the arbiter of that.
Mm,
And so just being able to be there for them, because it's so hard for them right now with all the social media and the way things are, that they need to feel safe somewhere. They need to be able to be able to express how they feel. My 13-year-old daughter needs to be able to swear, like she swears a fair amount, as it turns out. And I don't let it trigger me, because it's her way to just like test the boundaries and to see if I can handle that. I
mhm.
feel like that's my interpretation of it. I don't think she's a bad kid. I think she's just like, that's her way of being funny, and to try to like shock adults. And it's like, it's pretty funny, you know? And so I try to just understand them. And when I don't understand them, I don't need to. I can just hold space for who they are. And just like that acceptance, just the acceptance of who they are. Because it's super awkward, man. Like, you
Yeah.
remember like growing up, it's like, you don't know. We do all these different things to compensate for that awkwardness. And you can just be awkward around me. And it's
Yeah.
okay. Like, you can just try to figure out who you are.
That's so cool. I love that perspective and just that freedom to yourself and to them to let them develop into who they are and just trying to figure it out along the way. Is there any intersection of that, or is there any challenge with that you face with times where you know that there's discipline or that you need to step in and provide some guidance versus giving them that space and letting them figure it out? Is
Yeah,
that a challenge?
it's a great question, and I would say there are times I nail it, and there are times where I don't get it right. But it's all learning, right? So I'm trying to figure out where my boundaries are as a dad,
Mm,
and increase their boundaries so that they can play on those edges, because that's where their real growth happens. And sometimes I go too far with it, and sometimes I'm a little bit too rigid, but it's okay because my intention is to serve them best,
mm,
and they feel that. And I would say sometimes my wife is frustrated. It's just like, I feel like you just want to be their friend. I was like, or you just want to be liked. I'm like, listen, I spent a long time, many years of my life just wanting to be liked. I know that energy. I know exactly what it feels like. This is not it at all.
mm.
This is me wanting to see them for who they are, and for them to feel safe, and them to be able to come to me with anything when the shit hits the fan. If I can't handle you swearing or you asking me certain questions, like I'll give you one. My 15-year-old came to me maybe a week or so. He actually been asking me a lot of questions about psychedelics,
Mm,
asked me about mushrooms, and asking me what I've, which ones I've experienced. And I've talked about it on my podcast. It's not like it's the big part of my podcast, but I don't shy away from it. On any podcast, right? Or in any conversation, let alone with my son. Like, he's asking me, can he trust me?
mhm.
And the answer is, yeah, you can. And this is what I've done. And this is why I did it. And this is a good experience. And this is where it was challenging. And this is what intention looks like. And it's like, here's some books if you're curious about it. He listened to my podcast with Kyle Kingsbury, the
Nice.
ones that we've had together. He loves Kyle. Kyle's like an uncle to him. And he reached out he's like, Dad, can I have Kyle's phone? I want to talk to him about this stuff. I'm like, yeah. I said, I'd love to be a part of the conversation just so I know what's being shared. Because I want to learn, and I also want to give my, kind of 2 cents on this whole thing, even though I know Kyle understands where I come from. But my point in all of this is my son felt like he could trust me enough to say, as a 15-year-old, I'm really curious about this. I want to know. I'm listening to Rogan. I want to watch this fantastic fungi movie. Like, it's like, okay, let's watch the movie together. Like, let's learn about this, because he's gonna learn about it. He's super
Right.
curious about it. He's gonna go on YouTube. He's gonna, rather than me being able to share with him my years of experience and the books and resources that have helped me, give him a clearer picture of what I think is a proper way to understand these. And I've been very clear. I said, dude, you are too young for this, just so we're clear. But I want you to have the information, just like we're talking about sex. Like, I want you to have the information. I don't want you to go to your buddies or your older brother or anything. They don't know.
Right.
You know, I'm 49, dude. I've been through a lot. Like, I can share some things with you. When I was your age, that didn't go right for me. And it doesn't mean that you're going to do it differently, but just so you know, these are the things that can happen. And it's not like teaching it from a book. It's like teaching from my own experience. And
Mm,
this is what happened to me when this was presented to me at a young age. Like, it wasn't good.
mm.
And I've spent, the last couple of years like healing that type of trauma. And it's like, just letting them know that it's all okay. And even Dad, who you put up on a pedestal, Dad's got his shit, and it's all good. It's like being in it. We're working through it, and I don't have anything to hide from you. And so just gaining that trust, like showing up for them, they're always testing you. So how are you going to show up? Are you going to panic? Are you
Mhm.
going to freak out? Or are you going to zoom out and say, what's the worst that happens in this particular situation? What's the absolute worst, right? My daughter on Saturday was sick. She got sick at night, was throwing up at night and in the morning. Maybe had a touch of something, maybe had food poisoning. We don't know. So Sunday she recovers. She has an IV. Monday, she sleeps in and wants to go to school at noon. My wife's like, you can't go to school. You were sick, you were this, you were that, the protocols. And she's like, clearly I didn't have COVID. Uh, I probably had food poisoning or touched, like, I'm fine. Like, I'm totally fine. And and I want people to just like listen to this part because it may not land for everybody. But what I said to my wife was, I kind of pulled her in another room and said, why is there so much resistance for letting her go to school? She wants to go to school. Like, this is where I feel like we're giving the out of touch parents. Like, why are we drawing a line in the sand here? Well, what if she gets someone else sick? Okay, let's explore that for a second. Let's say that she is sick and she is contagious with something. Okay, she gets somebody else sick. Okay, she just got sick. Someone got her sick. Okay, it's what happens.
Mm.
We're like, and I'm not saying, I just want people to listen. You can pick apart what I say all you want, but just listen. What's the worst that happens is you get someone else sick. I don't want her to get someone else sick, but the likelihood that she's going to get someone else sick is very, very small. And if she does, that kid's going to be okay. They're going to stay at school. They're going to be home. They're going to get taken care of. Maybe they needed a reboot, whatever. But it's like, we're like, oh, I don't want to get someone sick. Is it really the end of the world? Like,
Mm.
you're creating this story about what may happen. There's a
Right.
million things that may happen on your way to school.
Mm-hmm.
We do it anyway. So let's just back off a little bit here and be like, okay, you want to go to school? You seem fine. You got a good night's sleep. You've been taking care of yourself. Okay. Like, it's like, listen, just listen. And we don't have to come in as the parent every time. I think a lot of us are brought up in this culture of this oppressive parenting, trying to control everything and make our kids be really good kids and behave in public and all that. And I'm just saying, F all that. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. You're just creating all
Right.
this tension with your kids, and you're worried about what other people think versus serving your kid. Your kid's 3 years old and you took them out to a restaurant for 3 hours. Whose fault is that? Like, they're not supposed to be there. So just let them be a kid,
Yeah.
rather than trying to, kind of put them in this box. And so anyway, I'll hop off the soapbox for a second there.
No, I love it. I mean, and as a first time parent with a kid who's just starting to walk, it's home of like, you want to wrap them in bubble wrap and not let them experience any of these hardships or like fall and experience that. And that's on a very micro level with the little ones. But I think as she gets older and as you're explaining, with your teenagers, it just becomes more and more evident, but maybe even evidence not the right word, because the consequences are much greater or expanded from falling and bumping your knee. But it's the same kind of path of letting them have those experiences. And the other aspect of that you would talk through is creating that space and that trust for them to come to you and talk about it and talk through it and work through it too, which is something that my wife and I talk about all the time, of like, how do we position our relationship with our kid and our future kids to have that trust? So it's really cool that you're talking about that and kind of how you got there. So are there any other nuggets of advice that you'd give in terms of how to build that trust with your kids?
Yeah, I think it's such a great question, and I don't think a lot of us are given the right tools to kind of manage that piece.
Mm-hmm.
But you nailed it, and this is how I try to live my life. This is how I share my lessons, is through my own experience. So I need to let my kids have their own experience. I can give them information, I can be there, but they're going to have their own experience. They're not going to learn shit through my experience. They
Mm,
just won't. They may have an idea, but until they have their very own experience with it, they don't really know.
right.
And it's hard. It's hard with young ones. You kind of become maybe hardened over the years. It's like, there's nothing I can do. Like, you wake up one day and your 18-year-old breaks his jaw playing football with his buddies. All of a sudden, this kid who, used to sleep with you in your arms is a grown ass kid with a broken jaw. And
Mm,
now what are you going to do?
mm,
Nothing I can fix. There's nothing to fix. a lot of times there's nothing to fix. We have to let our kids go through their own experience and just honor that, because these experiences, the really hard ones, like my son breaking his jaw, are life changing, and they can be amazingly life changing if we allow for them to have that experience, to not rush to, oh, you're going to be great, it's going to be okay, you're going to be fine. No, like, this sucks, and I don't know how this feels to be in the situation you're in, and I'm hurting because I see my son in a lot of pain and helpless. And I know that basketball is your favorite sport and that your season potentially just got decimated your senior year. And I'm sad for that. I'm sad. So it's just like let them have their own experience. And this, again, zoom out, like, what's the worst that happens? Everything can be kind of managed, dealt with. Every learning experience is an opportunity for growth. And I think you and I both know that when things are going great, there's just not a ton of learning going on. But when we hit those moments that make us stop and challenge those beliefs, that's where we start to see new versions of ourselves and we grow. And I saw that in my 18-year-old when he broke his jaw, that it didn't take very long when he came out of that and he got back to playing basketball again. He was a completely different kid. Just the way he carried himself was such an air of cool that wasn't like the shitty cool. It was like, I'm just good. You know what I mean? I'm just good, and had this quiet confidence about him that was amazing to witness.
That's awesome. And I heard you talk a bit more about that with your conversation with Boyd Vardy. And that was an amazing episode that I recommend people go check out. But one of the key takeaways for me personally, that you guys talked through with that experience with your son, was not projecting how you think they feel on the situation, because you could ultimately, you don't know if that's how you feel unless they share that. And you could do more harm than good in assuming they feel one way or the other through a challenging experience and not letting them just feel how they feel and work through that themselves. But, helicoptering and trying to fix it when you don't truly know what it is that you're fixing.
Yeah, it's a perfect example. And yeah, that's perfectly stated too. It's, don't project our stuff onto them. Ask them what they need. And by doing that, we're teaching them to advocate for themselves, to actually say to tune in. What do I really need right now? Jake, do you want me to lay down with you and watch a show? No, Dad, I want to be by myself. Cool. Okay. I'm not projecting I just want to be with him. I want to be around him. I want to love on him. The best way I can love on him is to give him his space. And then if I'm hurt by that, that's my shit. Like, come on, man, your kid just broke his jaw. I'll be very clear. I was not hurt by that. I came in very clear that I was here to serve him in any way that I could. Yeah, in that episode with Boyd, I'm glad you brought that up. There's just such great medicine in there for everybody. It's just about how to deal with adversity in our kids' lives, or even in our own lives. Sometimes we just need to sit in it and just allow ourselves to process it and not move to that place where we know we'll eventually get, but just to honor the process of the pain, that we're going through. Which is hard for men.
Yeah, you're telling me, man. Yeah. You were talking a little bit about maybe that, but that you're working through healing of your younger self. Is there anything within your younger self as a father that you're reconciling, or that you've reflected back on, that you've learned from, that's helped you be a better father today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you this. It took till about last December, where, having conversations with, my boys about sex and all that. It was very much from an informational point of view versus my own experience. And I had this knowing one morning in a meditation where I saw where I had experienced some childhood sexual trauma, and I'll just say it wasn't. Um, it, I'll just leave it at that. And when I saw that, I didn't see myself as the victim. I didn't see the person as the perpetrator. I saw the person as someone who was wounded. And he was
Mm,
actually trying to do something to teach me about the birds and the bees because my dad didn't know how. And so this was someone who didn't really have the tools to do it, that was trying to teach me and really taught me about sex at a very young age.
mm,
And I wasn't mature enough to handle that. And I started to, when I had that knowing, it's like, oh, I know how to talk to the boys now about this because I can talk about my own experience
mm,
that, okay, I know you're going to look at pornography. I don't know how to stop you from doing it.
right.
Um, so, and I'm not trying to, so I just know that's a part of, unfortunately, this rite of passage for boys. But I can talk to you about when that's not, you're not in the right relationship with that, what can happen, how everything can become sexualized in your life, in
Mm,
your relationships. And this is what it looks like. And this is what it looks like when you're fully integrated and you could be sensual and love another person. And, kind of the choice is yours to pay attention to these things. But I didn't have context for it until I thought about my own experience. It was like I was fumbling around, like, how do I even talk to these guys about this? I don't know. Because it didn't feel authentic.
right.
It's like spitting back like what the book said. It's like it didn't land for them. It didn't land for me. Again,
Hmm.
energetically, when I start to talk about my own experience, they get that. And now they're in.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to share that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, is there any advice that you would give or offer to a new dad? So somebody close to you finds out that
Mm.
they're expecting they're going to be embarking on this journey. Any nuggets that you would share with them?
A little bit what we talked about earlier, but one of the best pieces of advice I got to witness was my partner at the trading firm where our mutual friend Dave and I used to work together. Will Hobart um, had an amazing family, and they were a little bit older than where we were in our kind of family kind of stages. I said, Will, how do you guys do it? Your kids are amazing. Like, what's the key? He's like, my relationship with my wife Julie
Mm,
is always front and center. We're affectionate. The kids know that no matter what's happening in the outside world, they always have a safe place to come,
mm,
that there's love here, that it's safe, and that they're accepted for all of it. And I understood it when he told me, but I didn't really understand it until more recently, until I started
mm,
to embody that and started to see the changes in my kids and the relationships I was having with them individually as we were creating a safe container in our house for them to express whatever they needed to express and to not feel judged. And yeah, so I think that's like this like be that place where your kids can always go. And even if they say some shit that shocks you, just I recommend you hold on to it because that initial reaction is what's going to resonate with them.
mm,
Even if you try to talk your way out of it, they're going to know like, oh, mom can't handle this or dad can't hold this. I can't go there. Like the more they get those signals, the less you're going to know, the less you're going to be able to connect with your kids. So just like disavow anything you've been taught about being a mom or dad and just tune into this kid needs you. They need you to be able to hold space for them because if you can't hold space for them, they'll find someone who does. And maybe it's some kid who's not a very good kid.
mm,
He's going to take them down a darker path.
mm.
But you have the opportunity to be there and to see them and to be able to hold all of it. I'm telling you, like it if it takes a lot of work to come back from that. And it's
Yeah.
not to say that you can't, but I encourage you to start now and start to challenge your own beliefs around what a good dad and a good mom is. Because a
Hmm.
lot of it, in my opinion, in my experience, is bullshit.
Hmm. And that holding space, do you think that comes from, or a piece of that comes from your relationship with your wife and with the spouse in the house, having that solid relationship? Does it start there, or is that kind of a separate piece of it?
I'd like to say it starts there, but I think it can also be a separate piece.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually not be totally vibing with your wife or your husband, right? Your partner, and really show up in a way that is grounded for your kids. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't think um, you need them to work together. I think it really helps.
Yeah.
It shows a beautiful unified front. And I know that we've had, when we've come together like that, it's really benefited the kids. But I would say even as recently as earlier this year, we weren't there.
Mm.
And our kids really needed us, and we were able to show up for them, even though we were struggling with our own relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. So both are important, but when you have them working in unison, it's probably the strongest front, but you got to put effort in
Exactly.
and energy into both.
Hmm.
Well, Cal, I mean, this has been an awesome chat, man. I'm sure that some of the guys listening are going to want to check out your show. I mean, you've had some epic conversations with a lot of just studs of human beings. So, where would you point people to learn more about you, the Great Unlearn, anything that you're putting out there, which is all amazing stuff?
Well, first of all, thanks, Brad, for having me on.
Yeah.
I knew the conversation was going to be great. And as I said, it's something that's very alive for me right now, being a dad. So thanks for holding space for me to be able to share
Of
that. And
course.
as I'm sharing, I'm working out even how I want to show up today for the kids, right? So it's a constant learning for me.
Hmm. And
But really, I think,
unlearning.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, well done. Well done. Um, the podcast is probably the best way. I mean, I'm not super active on Instagram. A lot of it's just around my podcast. I'll post stuff from my Wednesday workouts with all the guys, but generally it's the podcast. And I think the one you pointed out, the one with Boyd Vardy, there are three with Boyd, but the most recent one is amazing. And yeah, it's been a really fun experience. And much like you, opening up this space for you to learn more, it's really been about me learning through my podcast. And it's been about me becoming a much better listener. Because as you know, as being, if you want to be a great host like you are, you pay attention. You have what you want to ask. These are things you want to ask me,
Hmm.
but I didn't know that. I couldn't tell. You were in the flow of the conversation the entire time. And when someone's not, they're just kind of reading off the questions that they really want to get to
Sure.
versus like, okay, where's this going? Also by saying, well, let's not get there yet. We're going to get you right. So
Right.
having that nuance too. So not just because there was a time when I didn't know how to do that. Now I'm paying attention to how the whole thing's being orchestrated, but I'm fully present for it. So I've loved the opportunity to bring people on for me to learn from them in the podcast. And as you know, you and I wouldn't have this conversation otherwise.
Right.
We got to sit down here and learn from one another in this really cool format. So I'm super grateful for the podcast, for whoever invented the podcast, that it's been such a cool medium for me to meet like amazing men and women and to continue to be in my journey, in my process.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you. Just the space that podcasting has created, but it's been a skill set that I've learned over, I don't know, 5 years of doing it now too, where I'm still feel like I'm an amateur, but I didn't realize until I started having these type of conversations just how bad I was at having conversations in general and asking questions and listening.
Yeah.
So it's pretty funny. And you mentioned your Wednesday workouts, dude. What a crew you guys have assembled. I think I first caught onto it when I saw Preston Smiles post about it, and then I'm like
Yeah.
looking at him like, look at this all-star lineup of men getting together in Austin. There's something happening here at Cal's place. So
It's been super cool. We were talking about it last night. It started in November. It was in a men's group. And some of the guys had been working out in someone's garage the previous Wednesday. Said, Cal, you got this cool gym. Can we work out in your place? Yeah, come on over. So every Wednesday since then, they've come over to my place. Even when I'm on vacation, they've come over and worked out.
That's awesome.
And so it started with, I think, 6 or 7 of us. And now the past 3 weeks, we've had 35, 34, 32. And I know this week we're going to have 45. I just have a notion like it's about to go off. So we'll manage it.
You're going to have to open a gym just for your Wednesday workouts. It's amazing.
It's been cool about it, Brad. And this is it. Like, I used to be so focused on my own personal goals around training, whether it was my clean and jerk, my snatch, my back squat, whatever the metrics were. I was so intent on being the best I could to feel, kind of feel that potential, and being in the energy with all these men who a lot of guys don't know there's no discussion about what we do. You'll know about some of them, like Preston, right? Preston, we know that he's a coach and has all these things going on, but like by and large, people don't know what the other guy does.
Yeah.
You're just there in the energy and the music, and it becomes this epicenter of this awesome energy of love and acceptance. And if you want to go really hard, you can go really hard. If you want to take it easy, you can take it easy. There's no judgment. And when we're done, we take a picture, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. And what a space for guys just to come together and be men too is the other thing with that I think a lot of us are missing. So kudos for you for holding that space for the gentlemen of Austin.
Yeah. Thanks, brother.
So, all right, Cal. Well, thanks for doing this. Thanks for hopping on. It was awesome chatting with you and connecting.
Yeah. Great to see you, brother.